They say you can know everything you need to know about people by how they treat you when they think no one is looking. I learned everything about the Whitmore family that night. It was the night of Margaret Whitmore's 65th birthday, held at their family's grand estate on Sullivan's Island, where the ocean breeze smelled of money and generations of silent, restless power. I wore a navy blue dress that Margaret herself had complimented pearl earrings simple enough not to offend old money sensibilities, and a smile that after 5 years of marriage into this family had become second nature. I told myself tonight would be different, that the months of planning I have poured into this celebration will be recognized. Finally, maybe I'll feel like I'm more than just an outsider who somehow forced his way into Charleston's aristocracy. I was wrong. As soon as I stepped out onto the back porch, I knew something was wrong. White linen-covered tables stretch across the manicured lawn under strings of twinkling lights, each seat meticulously arranged. Champagne flowed freely as waiters in pressed black and white uniforms weaved between groups of guests, exchanging the syrupy pleasantries I had come to know so well. I smiled, nodded, accepted the air kisses, and continued toward the family table near the top of the lawn, where Margaret sat resplendent in a deep emerald gown flanked by her loyal admirers. My husband Ryan was standing chatting with his sister Caroline and her husband Will, his perfectly tousled blonde hair catching the last rays of the setting sun. And then I saw it. 12 chairs, 12 seats each, with a small engraved name card placed on luxurious porcelain plates with gold trim. 12 glasses of water were already poured. 12 sets of shiny silverware sparkled in the candlelight. I quickly ran through the names: Margaret Richard Ryan, Caroline Will, Aunt Susanna, Uncle John, Cousin Grace, Cousin Charlotte, Grandmother Helen, even Margaret's bridge partner Mrs. Alcott, no Emily. There is no 13th chair. I stood motionless for a heartbeat too long. Ryan caught my eye, his mouth curling into a grin that once made me melt, but now just felt taunting. "Oh," he said casually, just loud enough for those closest to hear. "We must have counted wrong." A wave of amusement spread across the table. Some family members chuckled, others snickered into their napkins. Margaret wiped the corners of her mouth with a linen napkin, her smile so tight it could crack porcelain. Then I realized that this was not a mistake. There is no innocent oversight. This was a performance, a public declaration that I didn't belong. That whatever outer shell they have expanded over the years is thin enough to tear in half with just one missing seat. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of polite conversation. It all sounded dislocated and distant, as if I were underwater. My hands trembled slightly at my sides, and I noticed curious looks from the grand guests, sensing the drama, but too polite to openly stare. This was the moment they expected me to collapse, smile weakly, laugh it off, then sit awkwardly on the edge of the stone planter box, or accept the folding chair hastily pulled over, to be graceful, become small. Instead, I straightened my spine. I smoothed the fabric of my dress with slow, deliberate movements, feeling the roughness of the linen and the steady beat of my own heartbeat in the palm of my hand. I raised my chin and looked straight into Margaret's calculating eyes. I forced my voice into something smooth and clear, louder than it needed to be, clearly cutting through the din of the conversation. "It seems like I'm not family," I said. 12 faces turned towards me, stunned into silence. The smug amusement disappeared from Ryan's eyes, replaced by something more wary, something colder. He didn't expect me to say it, not too clearly, not too publicly. Without waiting for me to answer, I turned on my heel and walked away. My heels tapping hard on the stone path. I didn't look back to see their reaction. I don't have to. Their silence was a roar in my ears. The night air grew cooler as I reached the front walk, the salty breeze tugging at my hair and cooling the sweat that trickled down my spine. I walked past the row of parked luxury cars, past the valet, who was hesitantly calling, "Ma'am, can I take your car?" without slowing my progress. I need distance airtime to think a small cafe sits across a quiet residential street, the lights warm and inviting in the dense darkness. That's where Margaret would have felt uncomfortable, because it was too normal, too ordinary. Perfect. I slipped inside the bell on the door, jingling merrily, and found a table in the corner near the window, where I could see the great pillars of the Whitmore estate still lit in the distance. The waitress, a girl not yet 19 years old, approached with a smile that showed sincere Southern hospitality. Without calculating anything, "What can I get you, honey? Coffee?" "Coffee," I said. My voice was hoarse, so I cleared my throat and tried again. "Black, please." As she hurriedly left, I pulled my phone out of my purse. My hands don't shake anymore. Instead, a cold, focused calm enveloped me. I was done playing the role of a grateful outsider, begging for scraps of acceptance from a family that had never really seen me as a convenient accessory to their perfect image. I opened the event management app I had built my career on. Whitmore & Co. may still think they held all the cards tonight, but they overlooked one important detail. The entire birthday weekend, dinners, vineyard, tours, luxury accommodations, even a gala night at the Charleston Yacht Club was booked through my company, Turner Events. Every contract, every booking, every carefully negotiated agreement bears my signature, not Margaret's. I hold the key to their perfect appearance, and now I hold the power to destroy it. I tapped the screen displaying the detailed itinerary. I scrolled through the reservations, custom tasting menus, at Oak and Grain, exclusive sailboat rentals on Charleston Harbor, charters, through historic downtown. All are cancelable, all are reversible, it's all within my control. The waitress returned with my coffee, and I thanked her with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I wrapped both hands around the warm cup, steeling myself for what I was about to do. I had 30 minutes, maybe less, before the Whitmores realized something was wrong. Before they knew it, the event organizer, the woman they had humiliated, had gone missing. Before they arrived, they sought to sweep the mess under the rug, with apologies delivered through gritted teeth. But it will be too late. I took a sip of coffee, the bitter taste on my tongue, and made my first cancellation request. Confirm, Monday, confirm, Tuesday, confirm. With each gentle tap, the knot in my chest loosened a little. With each confirmation, I peeled away another layer of the fake life I had wrapped for Ryan and his family. Tonight wouldn't end like they scripted. I'll rewrite the ending tonight. Tonight, I will begin to take back my life, one decision at a time. As I sat in a chair by the window, watching the party lights across the street, shimmered like fragile stars about to fall. The next morning, Charleston's humid air clung to the air like a wet blanket as I walked down King Street, my sandals tapping lightly on the old brick sidewalk. The city begins to stir. Shopkeepers unlock their doors. The smell of freshly baked cakes wafts from bakeries, tourists with cameras hanging around their necks. Everything seemed normal, as if last night had never happened, as if I hadn't detonated a carefully orchestrated social bomb inside the Whitmore dynasty. My phone vibrated constantly in my purse, the steady drumbeat of missed calls and unread messages. Ryan called 8 times between midnight and 3 a.m., alternating between worried voicemails. "Emily, where are you? Come home. We can work this out," to more angry ones. "You're exaggerating. You're embarrassing yourself." There were also messages from Caroline, sharp and condescending, and even a sweet message from Margaret herself, dripping with feigned concern. We must not let a little misunderstanding ruin family relationships. Family cohesion. What a joke. I ignore everything. Instead, I found myself wandering into a small cafe located between two art galleries. A far cry from the Whitmore's favorite brunch, haunts no marble countertops or imported espresso. Here just chipped cups, scratched tables, and a chalkboard menu offering blueberry pancakes and strong coffee. It feels real honest. A place free from the expectations and judgments that have plagued me since the day I said, I do. I walked into a booth by the window, ordered a black coffee and a plate of eggs, and took out my laptop. It's time to think bigger. Canceling last night's dinner was a start, the first move on the chessboard. But if I was going to leave Whitmore's, not just Ryan, but the entire toxic establishment, I needed a plan. I opened my email. There, buried among Whitmore's messages, was a message from Sarah Jennings, an old friend and fellow event planner who moved to Atlanta 2 years ago. I saw your name floating around in a few conversations. Rumor has it that you are looking for a new opportunity. Let's talk. I still haven't been contacted, haven't even thought about leaving Charleston until last night. But now the idea of a clean break of starting over in a new city without the stifling shadow of the Whitmores almost excited me. My fingers hover over the keyboard, then my phone vibrated again. This time, it was a message from Margaret herself. Not last night's fake sweet words, but something colder. Emily, considering your behavior, we think it's best for you to take some time for yourself. The family is very disappointed. Ryan will handle separating your belongings from your home. Please do not return without notice. I stared at the screen, stunned. Don't come back unannounced. As if I was some embarrassing relative they needed to manage. It was as if I had been written out of the family story. For a moment, rage boiled under my skin, hot and blinding. They want me to go. They wanted to erase me as neatly and quietly as possible, before the cracks in their perfect facade became more apparent. They thought they could push me out as an incompetent guest at their table. They don't know who they are dealing with. I bookmarked Sarah's email and began composing a reply. Yes, I'm interested in new opportunities. Yes, I would love to discuss potential partnerships or openings in Atlanta. That's right. I'm ready to build something new from the ashes they thought they buried me under. As I pressed, send, a strange joy filled me. Not fear, not grief, but anticipation. A door is wide open. And this time, I was the one who chose to walk through it. The waiter returned to bring me breakfast, and I forced myself to eat, because I knew I needed energy. Today is not just about survival, it's about strategy. The next item on my mental checklist is the house. The historic Charleston house on Trad Street, where Ryan and I once lived, isn't technically owned by the Whitmore family. Ryan and I bought it together after our wedding. But Ryan's parents gave a huge gift for the deposit, one that came with invisible strings. Every piece of furniture, every framed photo, every antique rug was a reminder that I lived not only with Ryan, but also under the endless judgmental gaze of the Whitmore family. According to Margaret's text, Ryan packed my things. That's not possible. If they think they can control how I leave, then they underestimate me. Again. I wiped my mouth, paid the bill, then stepped out into the hot sun and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. My cousin Jake answered on the third ring. You? Is that you? Hey, Jake, I said, my voice monotone. Remember when you said if I needed help, don't ask? There was a pause, then his easy chuckle. I mean it. What's going on? I need a truck and some solid support today. I see where and when. Trad Street. Noon, I'll explain when you get there. No. I ended the call and allowed myself a small smile. If the Whitmores wanted a scene, they were about to get one, just not the kind they scripted. As noon rolled around, Jake and his two friends, both built like linebackers, pulled into an old Ford pickup truck. Their windows rolled down to let in the sticky air. I waved them down, and we parked a block away from the house, out of sight. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked as we loaded up the boxes and heavy-moving dollies. "Positive," I said. "We only took my things. Nothing belonged to them." He grinned. "Damn, 'em always knew you had some fire under that docile exterior." I laughed, surprising myself with the sound. Guess it just struck the right spark. We approached the house like soldiers on duty. Of course I had the key, and I used it entering the lobby, where the cool air and the smell of polished wood touched me. Everything is quiet. Too quiet. Ryan must have assumed I would follow their rules, obediently appearing before a lawyer or a mediator. He didn't expect this. Room by room, we moved quickly but carefully. My clothes, my books, my personal art collection, my grandmother's handmade quilt, the jewelry my mother gave me on my wedding day, the crumpled copy of the book Little Woman I read every summer. Growing up, Jake and his friends moved like a well-oiled machine, boxing, tagging, carrying. Halfway there, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Ryan appeared, barefoot, scruffy, wearing yesterday's clothes. For a brief moment, our eyes were fixed on the cavernous living room, and I saw a flash of panic there. "Emily," he said, his voice sharp and skeptical. "What the hell are you doing?" I smiled sweetly. "Obey your mother's orders. Leave on your own." "I can't just..." He helplessly pointed at the growing stack of boxes. "This is not how it's done." "Right." I tilted my head. I thought we stopped caring about appearances. Jake and his friends loomed behind me, silent but sturdy. Ryan hesitated, then ran his hand through his hair, clearly realizing he was outnumbered and outmatched. "Okay," he muttered. "Take your things, but you can't take anything bought with the family's money." I raised my eyebrows. "Oh, don't worry, I don't want anything tainted by that generosity." Ryan's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue further. Within 2 hours, everything important to me was neatly packed into the back of the truck. I took one last look around the house where I had never truly felt at home, and felt nothing but relief. As we drove away, I didn't look back. Heat radiated off the asphalt. The air smelled of salt and rebellion, and for the first time in years, I realized I was free. I still don't know what the future will look like, but I know this well. It will be mine. And the Whitmores. They would just be another chapter in a story I had overlooked. As Jake's truck rolled into the parking lot of my makeshift apartment, the afternoon sun was starting to set, creating long yellow streaks on the cracked concrete. My new home, an old brick building on the north end of Charleston, was a far cry from the historic charm of Trad Street. But it's mine. There are no family plaques on the wall, no society friends clutching their pearls, no unwritten codes of conduct whispered like gospel in the living room. Just a modest 2-bedroom apartment with rickety floors, peeling paint, and freedom humming through every square inch. Jake and his friends unloaded the boxes as efficiently as they had shown at home, stacking them neatly in the living room. As the last box landed on the scratched hardwood floor, Jake wiped his forehead and grinned. "Well, cousin," he said, plopping down on the old sofa that came with the place, "what's next? Are you having a housewarming party or planning the next chapter of your rebellion?" "Maybe both," I said, laughing a truly deep, guttural laugh that startled me with its strangeness. Jake's smile softened. "Good. It's time you remembered who you are." As they left, promising to return with pizza later, I wandered around the small apartment, opening random boxes, letting familiar objects ground me. A chipped photo frame shows me and my college friends arm in arm after graduation. The vase my sister gave me when I first opened an event planning company. My mother's old cookbook, its pages smeared with flour and love. These are artifacts of my real life, not the designer handbags that Margaret insisted I carry, not the flashy jewelry that Ryan gave me more to impress than to please. These things are mine, and in this space, they can breathe freely again. My phone rang again. Another message from Ryan. "We need to meet to discuss the house and finances, please, Emily. For once, be reasonable, reasonable." It was their favorite word whenever I challenged Whitmore's story. Reasonable means quiet, follow decorate. I threw the phone on the counter without answering. Instead, I pulled out my laptop. Sarah Jennings enthusiastically responded to my previous email. She hired a senior event manager at her company, Jennings & Co. And although the company is headquartered in Atlanta, much of the work happens remotely with clients across the Southeast. "Let's talk tomorrow," her message read. "You will be a great asset, an asset, not a liability, not a wife-shaped accessory to display at galas and hide during strategy meetings. A person is valuable because of what she has built, not who she marries." I typed a quick reply, confirming the video call the next morning. As I pressed send, I realized my hands were shaking again. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. For the first time in a long time, the future was something I could shape for myself. That night, after Jake delivered a greasy pepperoni pizza and a six-pack of beer, I lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling. Exhaustion weighed on me like a lead blanket. But sleep never came. My mind kept returning to the Whitmores. They won't let this go easily. Margaret, in particular, will fight for control of the narrative. The whispers may have already begun. Emily Turner, unstable. Emily Turner, dramatic. Emily Turner, ungrateful. That thought made my stomach turn. Not because I care about their opinions anymore, but because I know how skillfully they weave a story. And Charleston society, for all its lavish garden parties and polished exteriors, was all too willing to believe in the version that best suited their ordered world. I need to be ready. The first light found me again at my laptop, drafting a document that was half legal, defense, half personal statement, timeline of my relationship with Ryan. Financial records, emails, texts, home purchase contracts, everything I could use if they tried to blame me for their failure. I will not be their scapegoat. Not this time. By the time I logged into the Zoom call with Sarah, I had 2 folders on my desktop, one labeled Fresh Start, filled with contracts and job opportunities. The other is labeled Just in Case, a digital shield against family that previously seemed impenetrable. Sarah's smiling face appeared on my screen, her auburn hair tied in a neat bun, her earrings bigger and bolder than ever. "Emily Turner," she said, grinning. "I can't tell you how happy I was to see your name pop up." "It's nice to show up," I said, and smiled back. She leaned slightly, lowering her voice. "I heard a little bit about what happened. The world is small, even across state lines." I felt heat rush to my cheeks. "Let me guess, the Whitmore version." Sarah snorted. "Please, I've worked with enough high-class families to smell PR a mile away. I don't care about gossipum, I care about your talent." Something inside me loosened at her words. Gratitude, intense and unexpected. For the next hour, we outlined the possibilities consulting work, supporting a major political fundraiser in Atlanta, maybe even a long-term partnership. It's not a promise, but it's a start. When we ended the call, I felt lighter than I had in months. I had options, I had a choice. I have a future that is not determined by Margaret Whitmore's seating chart. That afternoon, my phone rang again. This time on the screen was a different name, Sophia Grant, reporter for the Charleston Courier, asking for comments for an upcoming social work. "I heard rumors that you're about to break up with Ryan Whitmore. Care to clarify?" So it has begun. The Whitmore family is trying to control the narrative. Paint me as unstable, difficult, unfaithful. I stared at the message for a long moment. I can't say anything, just let the rumors spread unchecked. That would be the easy way. The reasonable path. Or I could do something un-Whitmore-like. Tell the truth, I dialed Sophia's number before I could second-guess it myself. She picked up the phone immediately. "Miss Turner, thank you for getting back to me. I'll give you a statement," I said, "but only on file, and only if you print it exactly as I said." There was a pause. Then, understood. I took a breath, the words flowing from me with surprising ease. I left my marriage because I realized that I had built my life on appearances instead of authenticity. I'm proud of the work I've done, the home I've built, the relationships I've nurtured. But I will not be in a situation where loyalty is expected without respect being reciprocated. I am choosing to move forward with integrity. Sophia was silent for a moment, then, so powerful. "It's true," I said. When I hung up the phone, I felt a strange vitality, as if a heavy rock had been lifted from my chest. The Whitmores could control their boardrooms, their social relationships, their meticulously organized dinner parties. But they don't control me, not anymore. That night, I sat on the tiny balcony overlooking the cracked parking lot, sipping cheap wine from a chipped glass, and watching the stars appear one by one. Each tiny point of light looked so fragile against the vast dark sky. But they burned anyway. Me too. The morning after my statement to Charleston, Courier ran the backlash hit like a hurricane hitting a fragile dock. By noon, my inbox was filled with solidarity and vitriol. Old friends, some of whom I hadn't heard from in years, sent quiet messages of support. Strangers reached out sharing their own stories of escaping from the golden cage. And then, there are everyone else. Whitmore loyalists, the ungrateful climber. Before Ryan, you were nothing. Hope you like the darkness, you'll never be welcomed back. I scrolled through the hate until my eyes burned, then slammed my laptop shut. Sure, their words hurt, but they couldn't deny the truth. That afternoon, when I returned from a short walk downtown, needing fresh air to relieve my chest tightness, I found an unexpected envelope taped to my apartment door. No address available, no sender name, just my name in aggressive, jagged handwriting. My stomach tightened. I tore it apart. Inside was a single photo, a candid shot of me at a previous charity gala, smiling beside Ryan Margaret, beaming between us. Someone had scribbled it with a thick black pen. Traitor. I dropped it as if it had burned me. I just stood there for a long moment, the hallway rotating slightly around me. Someone was too close to my building to leave here. Close enough to know where I live. I leaned my back against the door, calming my breathing. It was just a threat, I told myself. Blush. They no longer have real power. But even as I tried to rationalize it, an old primal fear still stirred in my gut. The Whitmore family may have lost their grip on Charleston's high society, but cornered predators are the most dangerous. I need help. I pulled out my phone and called Jake. He answered on the first ring. Are you okay? There is no opening statement, no usual jokes. I think someone from their group found my apartment, I said, keeping my voice low, even though I was alone. They got rid of something. Are you home now? Yes, don't move, I'm coming, true to his promise. 15 minutes later, Jake arrived, his work boots climbing the stairs 2 at a time. He looked at the photo on the floor and muttered a string of curses that I didn't know. He knew. This isn't just a social drama anymore, he said, looking around the hallway. This is harassment. He carefully picked up the photo using a tissue. We are reporting this. I don't want to blow things up anymore. Emily. His voice was sharp and commanding. They escalated. You have every right to escalate again. 10 minutes later, we sat at the local police station while a tired-looking officer took my statement. He listened attentively, nodding occasionally, but when Jake showed him the photo, his eyes became sharp. Were there any threats before that? Online. I admitted, mostly anonymous, some cruel messages. The police officer typed a few keys on the computer. Keep one at a time. Take screenshots of everything. Whenever you feel unsafe, call us immediately. Got it. I nodded, my hands clasped in my lap. After filing the report, Jake insisted on driving me home and personally checking every lock on my windows and doors. I'll install the security system tomorrow, he said curtly, fiddling with the door latch. Non-negotiable. Tears stung my eyes, part fear, part gratitude. But I blinked them away. I have lost too much dignity towards the Whitmore family. I won't surrender another drop. That night, after Jake left with a promise to check in every hour, I sat in the apartment in silence and forced myself to face the reality I was tiptoeing around. Margaret wasn't just angry, she is scared and fearful people, especially those whose entire identity is tied to their appearance, do desperate and dangerous things. I need to be ready. The next morning, a knock on the door startled me awake. Heart pounding, I peeked through the peephole. That's not Jake, it's Ryan. Standing in my hallway like a ghost from a nightmare, holding a drooping bouquet of flowers, wearing a rumpled suit that showed he hadn't slept either. Against my better judgment, I broke down the door. Emily, he said, his voice rough. Please. The image of him, the man I had promised forever, brought up a mixture of painful emotions, anger, sadness. And the most dangerous thing is a glimpse of pity. 5 minutes, I said tightly, walking up the steps, but letting the door close behind me. That's all you get. He sagged slightly with relief. I didn't know it would go this far. He said, my mother. She's out of control. She's the one who stirred this up. And you? I asked coldly. Are you just standing there? He flinched. I never wanted it to be ugly. He muttered. I just think if we solve this quietly, it will be easier for everyone. Nay. Everyone wants to talk about your reputation. I interrupted. Pictures of your family. Emily, he said, and held out his hand, but I backed away. You abandoned me. I said my words sharper than I expected. You let them publicly humiliate me. You let them erase me as if I were some outdated seasonal decoration. He turned pale. I made a mistake, he whispered. No, I said, you made a choice. For a moment, we stood there, two people who once dreamed of building a life together, now separated by a canyon of betrayal. Finally, Ryan dropped the flowers at my feet, a pathetic surrender, and turned away. When he disappeared down the stairs, I realized something. I don't hate him. Not anymore. I simply don't need him. And that more than any police report or public scandal was the real beginning of my freedom. That afternoon, a meeting with my lawyer confirmed what I suspected the Whitmores were fighting. They got in touch this morning, she said, rummaging through a thick file of documents. They are proposing a quiet solution, total division of assets, no need for NDA. My eyebrows raised. No gag order. She smiled sinisterly. They're afraid of what you might reveal. A strange, almost giddy laugh rang out within me. I went from their pawn to their greatest responsibility. Good. I signed the papers without hesitation. No more constraints. The Whitmore name is no longer tied to me. I'm Emily Turner again, and this time, no one can keep me quiet. The first real celebration of my new life was small and spontaneous. That evening, Jake and a few close friends gathered in my messy living room. Pizza boxes stacked cheap champagne bubbling on mismatched glasses. As the clock struck midnight, Jake raised his glass. To Emily, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. The only woman I know who can burn down an empire and still build something better from the ashes. Others cheered and clinked glasses. I smiled, raised my glass high. For freedom, I said, and for the first time in years, I mean every word. When the doorbell rang, I was inventorying the new boxes in my small store. Brightly colored labels, handmade clothes made by local artisans, neatly arranged in rows, are a living testament to the new life I am building. I quickly pushed my tangled hair behind my ear, brushed the dust off my faded jeans, then went to open the door. Standing there was Ryan, his face haggard, his suit rumpled, his eyes filled with naked despair. Next to him, Margaret Whitmore, the woman who once treated me like a useful object, maintained her usual poise, but her cold eyes revealed cracks that could not be hidden. We need to talk. Ryan started, his voice hoarse. I crossed my arms across my chest, blocking the doorframe. About what? The way you and your family arranged to put me on the street as an unwanted person. Margaret chimed in, her voice as sweet as honey. Emily, you know I never fully accepted you, but mistakes are something every family makes. Now we are all in the same danger. We need to unite. I almost burst out laughing. Solidarity. When I'm no longer useful, will I be kicked like an outdated card? Ryan walked up, his voice shaking. Please save my family. If the financial scandal spreads further, we will lose everything. My mother, my father, everything. I looked at them calmly, like looking at two bad actors trying to force themselves in front of an empty stage. They don't come out of love, out of regret. They come for profit, for the rotten social network they worship. You can save us. Ryan repeated, then suddenly knelt down in the middle of my store. Margaret rolled her eyes, but did not stop. For the first time in my life, the man who once despised me and betrayed me was kneeling before me in despair. My heart sank a beat. I admit a very small part of me still clings to memories of those early hopeful days. But then I clenched my fists, reminding myself it was just an illusion. I opened my mouth to refuse outright, but suddenly my eyes fell on a small detail. What Margaret was clutching in her hand, a cream-colored envelope, half hidden and half open under her designer clutch. A premonition urged me. What is it? I asked, pointing to the envelope. Margaret was startled and held tighter, but I quickly reached out and grabbed her. Ryan cried out, but it was too late. I tore the envelope. Inside were photocopied documents, the share transfer contract of Whitmore Holdings, and the most shocking part, a transfer document with the condition of naming an heir. My name, I read each line quickly. The more I read, the more surprised I became. This is the backup plan Margaret created after learning of irreversible financial risks. If Whitmore Holdings collapses, they will need a new person to restructure the company. A fresh, clean face with an independent reputation, and Emily Turner, a talented former event planner, is the perfect candidate. The only thing is this plan expected me to accept the role of puppet, letting the Whitmore family control the strings from the shadows. I closed the document and looked straight at Margaret and Ryan. So not only do you want me to save you, but you also want me to become a mask for your rotten family. Margaret stepped forward, her eyes cold. You get the reputation, we keep the power. It's a mutually beneficial agreement. I laughed, a cold laugh that I didn't even recognize in my voice. No, Margaret, no way. Emily. Ryan crawled over, his voice cracking. If you don't help, my whole family will be prosecuted. We'll lose everything. I bent down lower to look straight into those defeated eyes. Ryan. I said, my voice as hard as steel. Your family lost everything because of your own greed and arrogance. It's not my fault. I threw the envelope on the table and stood up straight. and I will not make a mask for those who betrayed me." Ryan collapsed, and Margaret stepped back as if she really saw me for the first time. I stepped outside, taking in the bright afternoon sunlight of Charleston, leaving the other two people to collapse in a space filled with evidence of greed and betrayal. This time, I didn't just leave their lives. I brought down the curtain on their own stage. The people who hurt you may think they have the end of your story, but the truth is, they just open a new chapter, where you are stronger, wiser, and freer. Emily didn't just escape a life limited by lies. She has found herself again, courageous, self-reliant, and aspirational. Pushed out of her comfort zone, she did not collapse, but flew higher. And so are you. Sometimes losing what we think we need is an opportunity to get what we really deserve. If you are also on the journey to find your inner strength. Don't forget to like this video, comment, to share your story, and subscribe to the channel. Let's create a community of souls who refuse to give up.